Hello, writer. I'm Janet McHenry, and today on Writing Wise, we are going to talk about how to construct quizzes that can lead readers to your book. And before we kind of jump into the slide presentation, I would just like to share a little personal something. I did create a quiz for my book, Praying Personalities, and it has been very successful in terms of leading people to the book, but also helping me to get subscribers to my monthly mini magazine that I create. And I want to just preface this by saying this is a challenging. It's a very challenging, aspect that you can add to your book because the quiz itself is actually also in the book with a QR code, but also printed out, and the answer code is in there as well. But it is online, and that makes it super handy to expand your reach into other places. And so, if you want to kind of, meander around and take a look at some of those quizzes that you find online, that's all well and good. My personal experience was that I used Sandra Dalton Smith's restquiz.com kind of as a model for what I wanted to do. Of course, my questions, my subject matter was completely different than hers, but I just kind of looked at it and studied the quiz itself in terms of like how she laid it out, and what pages there might have been involved with that, and how answers were found and all those kinds of things. So that could be a model for you. Her book that led to was called Sacred Rest. And so you can get information inside that book, Sacred Rest, and her quiz is restquiz.com. And my own quiz is called prayingpersonalities.com. So that those could be two quizzes that you could take a peek at to decide, if you want to do this, how might you put it together? What does this even look like? Welcome to anybody coming in today. We're going to kind of jump into the PowerPoint now, and Shelly's helping me out today. And so we're going to go back to slide 1, though. Here we go. So you may wonder, like, why would I even think about doing a quiz? First off, they're really fun. They're just fun things to do. So we can go to the next slide. They're fun things to do. They can tap into a personal connection to a reader who has the same interest in the topic on which you are writing. So that's what we're trying to do. And it can also build that sense of your being an authority on a particular topic. And so that trust level can build with the reader, your potential reader. And then eventually it bridges that person from the quiz to your book. You can take them right to your Amazon page or your own website, wherever you want to sell your book. And then so you begin to establish this connection with people. I also need to mention probably that it enhanced my subscriber list tremendously. I have at least 6,000 people who've come from the quiz on my subscriber list. And so that has really helped me expand my reach. And the thing is, those people who are taking the quiz are already interested in your topic. And so unlike other kinds of ways that we can get people to come onto our subscriber list, they tend to stick because they're already interested about, for example, my topic, which is prayer. So that's why quizzes can matter. And they feel personal, and they invite this sense of participation rather than simple passive reading that you could offer through an article or a blog. So we might think of it as being a gimmick. For me, it was a method certainly to reach potential readers, but I also wanted to actually help readers, those readers, with the answer that they're coming into my book with. So it's praying personalities, and I established 4 different praying personalities. So I wanted to help people get to that. So the quiz is actually in the book. It has a QR code people can click on so they can do it on their phone. So all the questions are actually in the book, and the answer key is also in the book itself. So it's a gateway to understanding. It's a gateway certainly to your book, but it's a gateway to understanding where the reader can go, oh, that explains the way I react or how I think or whatever, how I behave. All of those things are really important, I think, and helpful when a quiz is done correctly. And let's call them quizzes rather than tests, because tests sound scary. Okay. So the objective is that you are wanting to create a quiz that serves these future readers, and the quiz will provide that sense of insight that will be meaningful to them, that will enhance their understanding, and then, of course, naturally lead to your book and to your e-list, which will help draw them to your website to learn more about you and the kinds of things that you are writing. We want to help readers feel helped, not sold to. And so we want to start with this idea of transformation. Think about the change that your book offers or your ministry offers. What kind of problem or problems, will your book actually solve for someone? And so that can be the kind of the very basic sense, underlying sense of what the quiz actually will be. So begin with the end in mind, that sense of transformation. What can the reader learn about herself by taking your quiz? So think of this as a diagnostic tool. Again, not a test. It's not something where people are going to have right answers and wrong answers. It's about this process of discovery. So they learn more about themselves, and they can understand where they are currently and perhaps where they want to be. And it gives all kinds of guidance and help to bring about that sense of transformation. So ahead of time, and boy, here we are again. Always, we're talking about our audience. We're talking about those readers. So we want to know who those people are. Who is she? What is she struggling with? What does she long for? Go back to your book, back to your proposal that you created before you even started writing your book, and think about all those ways that you defined who your audience is. And so, is it a mom who feels alone? Is it a mom who's struggling with feelings of inadequacy? Think about all those ways that you could characterize the different readers who would come to your book. And then that's how we're going to begin to design the quiz around that idea. So you were identifying felt needs in doing that. Some specific felt needs could be that sense of spiritual dryness, a sense of inconsistency about certain spiritual disciplines, such as reading the Bible or prayer. Maybe there's a confusion in terms of understanding who we are in Christ as believers. Maybe they're simply discouraged in some kind of way. So your quiz then will provide clarity and help. There's that new sense of understanding. So for example, with my quiz, I not only tell the reader, as a result of the quiz that they've taken, what kind of praying personality they have, but okay, so if you have this praying personalities, all of these particular praying practices might be a natural way for you then to pray. So I'm not only identifying or characterizing who that reader might be, but providing additional help. And then, of course, I can say, and there's more information in the book, and here's the link. So as we're thinking about then, so we think about who our audience is and what their particular felt needs are. We're thinking about the messaging behind our book overall. We need a really good title for this quiz. So you want to craft a compelling title. So the book title for me was Praying Personalities. So I'll call it the Praying Personalities Quiz. Keep it simple. Why give it a different kind of a name than what the book title is itself? They really should connect in some way. So here are some ideas for you in terms of how you could give a name to your particular quiz. What's your prayer style? How to get spiritually unstuck? What kind of parent are you? This kind of thing will, if someone's struggling with their parenting in some way, they will click on that. Or if someone's, even struggling with, getting her kind of fashion sense together. You see those fashion sense kind of quizzes all the time on Facebook and social media. So think about, what is going to be the underlying message of your book? What is your title? Have them all connect to that certain felt need that's going to appeal to the writer. So you're definitely, that title is going to be is going to determine whether someone clicks or doesn't click. We want to keep those results simple. So I would highly suggest that, as someone's taking your quiz, you're going to take them to different, eventually, the way they answer the quiz will take them to different possibilities. So we have the quiz questions, and then that leads people to, it funnels them to a different place of understanding. So are you this, or are you this, or are you this, are you this? Don't have more than 4 to 6 kind of eventual result categories, and make sure that each of those categories has a clear distinction from the other ones that you are creating. Give those memorable names as well. If you have more results than 4 to 6, and I think even 6 is way too many, 4 is great. 4 is a perfect number. Too many results can tend to overwhelm and confuse someone, and it begins to feel like the lines are fuzzy between those different categories of the results. You want to name those results positively. Oh, I have a typo in there. Missed that one. So you want to avoid shame-based labels of different kinds. You don't want someone to feel bad, about themselves. Even the results should help them feel hopeful. Years ago, I studied the personalities, and I read a half a dozen different books on the personalities, and it was revelatory to me personally, because I always felt like I wasn't that joy like a fountain Christian. I always felt like I wasn't that peace like a river Christian. I always felt like I wasn't that love like an ocean Christian. I was different than that. And then when I studied and understood my personality, that helped me realize my place in the world, and that God had a specific plan for me, a specific purpose for me, and I had certain giftings and all of that. So it wasn't a shame-based discovery like Janet isn't any of those. She's this, and that's too bad for you. But it should give people hope and help guide them, give them a sense of new understanding about who they are. You're going to build those questions very strategically. Each question is going to map to one of those eventual results that you have. I have four results for the Praying Personalities quiz. And as I was constructing the questions themselves, I'd already done this intense kind of definition for each of those praying personalities. So, and one question relate to how people study God's word. Lots of the questions relate to how they respond in prayer, how they respond to emergencies, things like that. So each of those personalities then would have a different kind of response that I could use in A, B, C, D kinds of answers. Not yes and no, but A, B, C, D. And so each of those responses to the question will take them to that different result the different numbers, like so that someone in a 16 question quiz, such as mine was, if 12 of those are all relate to that one personality, that's a sure indicator that they're strong for that particular result. So you have to carefully build those questions strategically. Every question has a purpose. Nothing is random in there. Everything makes sense. Everything is intentional. You want to also think about behavior-based kinds of questions. For example, when do you pray? What do you do when you're stressed? Those kinds of and then your A, B, C, D kind of answers, are different from one another, and each of them must connect to one of those specific results. So it's very carefully planned. As I was writing the book, I had in mind the four different praying personalities, but I had no idea how I was going to go in and create the quiz itself and whether it would be authentic. And so it was the very last thing that I did. It's the very last chapter in the book. But as I was actually doing the studying, doing the, and had this growing understanding of each of those results, then it was easier for me then to create the quiz. So those behavior-based questions are really important because behavior reveals truth more so than beliefs will. Hear that? Beliefs are what we think is the right thing or the best thing or something like that. But behavior actually reveals more about who we actually are as Christian believers. Keep the quiz simple, make it easy to understand, make it quick to answer. There may be some of those, and you've probably taken many of those different kinds of quizzes. Many of them are like, oh, I think I do that, and I think I do this. We don't want readers, you always instruct them not to overthink, not to dwell on answers, but what is their very first instinct is typically going to be the best answer. This is different than those state mandated tests that our children took and that we probably also took in school because we are speaking more about human behavior. So start your quiz by kind of profiling the results. In other words, you've got potentially 4 different kinds of results, and at length define those. Think of all the different ways that you could particularly define those, and then categorize them in a parallel kind of structure. So you've got your results at the bottom, and you think about, okay, you create your question, and each of those answers are going to be different. And so then you're going to build the questions from those particular kinds of categories, but you have to have a parallel sense of understanding about the behavior for each of those particular 4 results. Avoid obvious answers. Again, there's not this philosophy with these quizzes that there are right answers and there are wrong answers. And then just encourage people to be honest. We often, and because I've studied many different kind of personality quizzes over the years, and I am a certified personalities coach. Um, what we find is that people often will answer some of these quizzes with what they perceive is the best answer, or how they want to um, portray themselves in the best type of way. But we really need to create kind of questions and answers that are going to invite honest responses. Okay. Again, there's a very important framework that you lay out in the initial instructions there to choose what they actually do. So if the question is behavior based, what time a day do you typically pray, for example, which is not a question on my quiz, by the way. Then, if we always think the morning is the best time to pray, then, people are going to choose often what they think is the best answer, but it's more important to construct the questions in such a way that it invites honesty and that sense of reflection. The ideal quiz length itself is probably 7 to 12 questions as I've kind of studied it. Mine is 16. I wanted it to be very precise. I didn't want there to be too many opportunities for having any, like the answer be, well, I got two here and I got two here and I got two here and I got two here. So, what is the right answer? I wanted to have different kinds of questions that didn't overlap with each other but provided those distinct kind of results that would lead more particularly to a question. You'll find you need enough for insight, but you also don't want to overload the reader. We've probably also taken some of those quizzes that you start taking the quiz and you realize, oh, there are 40 or 60 questions in this quiz. And then you're like, I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore. This is not helpful. So you want to be able to, for someone to do it, to be able to complete it in just a couple minutes. So probably 12 questions. Mine was 16. I think you need probably that many to be able to provide insight and rather than overload. You'll need more questions if you have more final results. So see how 4 times my results were 4. So 4 times 4 is 16. So they gave a lot of different possibilities in the configuration of the answers. If you had 6 possible results, you're going to need more questions to be able to provide that distinction from one result to another. If you're doing this as a lead magnet simply for your website, you can keep it shorter. Maybe it's more fun. I've seen some like what kind of mom are you kind of quizzes where there are only 6 questions. Uh, I'm not sure that you can provide that much helpful, but for the sake of just providing something light or even comedic, your quiz could just be for fun's sake. Why not? Um, I think those very short quizzes will not generally are going to provide authentic, kind of sort of more scientific kind of responses, which that was what I was aiming for personally, because of the fact it's actually in the book itself. So I wanted to be able to do that due diligence with my publisher so that the publisher had the sense that it worked. And by the way, right before the book came out, I was able to visit my publisher, and they brought all the employees from sales and marketing and publicity and editorial. They brought them all in. There were about 25, 30 people in the employee room, and they had them take the quiz. And then I was so nervous. I introduced the quiz. And so here are all these people then taking the quiz. And I wanted to bite my fingernails, but I thought that wouldn't look very professional. So but then when they got to their answers, they were like, I watched them and they're all nodding and they're like, this makes sense. Yeah, I can see that. Because I could provide some help to them. So if they found themselves to be that certain praying personality, here's some ideas for you about how to make prayer more natural in your life and your lifestyle. So that was kind of an interesting, I think, and it really is important. And I talk about this later to kind of test the quiz. So, I think that can be helpful as a whole. I think, what you want eventually is for your readers when they get the results to be nodding their heads and going, yeah, that makes sense. And maybe even laughing because it is so true. So you're going to vary the kinds of questions you have. They should be practical. They should be relevant. They should be situational. So they're addressing human behavior. And the variety of the questions there will keep the engagement high. The results are everything. The results actually will determine the impact. Each answer is going to lead to one of those results. So you're going to create an answer key. I have the answer key in my book, and you don't want it to be predictable. Like, so they always that letter C always leads to the same result. No, do that. You have to mix them up So I created an answer key for that. Um, you and again, the ABCD kinds of results will be better than a yes or no. And then test that test over and over again with multiple test takers and perhaps even a consultant or two. And so if your book, for example, maybe you want to do a quiz, you write for moms and you want to do a quiz, what kind of mom are you? Um, then I would test that with those, maybe others who are already writing on that subject. Friends of yours or, similar friends of yours are writing on that particular topic. Those are considered experts. People will remember this result. They won't remember the questions themselves, but people remember this results, and that will help them. It should help them, it should encourage them. And I actually use two different consultants, both who were personality trainers and had written on the topic. And so I asked them to take the quiz and we went over the questions and over each of the answers. Is this correct for this particular personality? Is this one correct? This answer correct for this particular personality? They were able to provide me with a couple tweaks that were very helpful for me in terms of the answers that people would have to choose and the eventual results themselves. And so that I could go into that confidently feeling like, yeah, that this works. And I've had people as a whole tell me that I nailed it, that I nailed their personality. Every once in a while, I'll have someone who says they got 4 each. I got 4 of these and 4 of these and 4 of these and 4 of these for all those different personalities. And they're like, what do I do with that? And so I'll just kind of smile and I'll say, well, Jesus, if in the book, I explained that Jesus was the perfect personality. And so he demonstrated characteristics and behavior of all the personalities that we might find. And so any of those kinds of praying practices you might find most helpful for you. So again, results are everything. You want to make sure that you're defining clearly each of those results. So as when you get to the result, it's not just like you give them a label, but define what that means. And this can be the clickable place where they get they take the quiz and then it tells them, for example, that in one of my personalities is the problem solver, as a praying personality. Okay, what does that mean? For the what does that mean kind of help, then they got to give me their email address for that particular kind of help. And in those kinds of definitions, there would be a short little explanation there with the sense that then with the statement afterwards, if you want to learn more about your praying personality, here's the book. And then they can click to that and order it. So those results would be you tend to, or you're someone who, or you like to, or you're most comfortable with. Those kinds of answers, several of those would be helpful to actually define the result that someone would get at the end of the test. You definitely want to affirm strengths. What are they doing well? And because that sense of encouragement will build trust, and that will, the idea behind our book, and probably speaking primarily toward the Christian living kind of book here as a genre. That's our objective, right? We're taking someone from a problem through a process of some kind to the promise that we're offering. And so any kind of these results, we let them discover their weaknesses and we affirm their strengths. So we're gently addressing those kinds of growth areas. One struggle for you might be some ideas to help you are. So there's that sense of truth, plus grace that can lead them to that place of new understanding or transformation. We want to explain, definitely some place at the quiz or the bottom of it or the intro to it. This is why I wrote Praying Personalities. And so if this interests you or resonates with you, you can find more about this particular topic in. So this, we want to make this kind of bridge natural, and the bridge is always to the book, to the book, to give you the email address to learn more. So we want to explain, particularly, why it matters, what spiritual significance, perhaps some of the transformation we have experienced personally, and the life impact that this can make for you. If as you learn more about this bigger kind of picture. These Let's talk a little bit about these bridge mechanics. You give them the immediate result, that simple label. Congratulations, you're a problem solver. And then there's a little bridge, what we call the little bridge. To learn more about your praying personality, just click here. And they put their email address and then they click. And now you've got the email address that will go into whatever kind of mail service that you use for your newsletter, such as MailChimp or MailerLite. There are many others as well. So there's that little bridge to learn more about your personality here. And then the big bridge then to read more about your praying personality, read such and such, read the book here. And then there's the Amazon link. So we have two different bridges that we can make from the quiz that can actually bring readers to you. The first is through to your e-list, subscriber list, and the next is to your book itself. Offer some kind of a bonus with this. If someone is going to subscribe, they're giving you their email address, and you have to tell them in doing that they are subscribing to your newsletter. And then you have a follow-up opt-in there that where they affirm, yes, I actually want to get this. Offer that lead magnet. And Carol and team are doing a great job in terms of teaching how to create lead magnets. That might be an introductory something to your book. It could be a prayer guide. It could be a checklist of some kind. It could be a simple 8.5 by 11 flyer with the 10 best tips to having a lasting marriage, very simple like that. So you're giving them that sense of added value. Yes, you're giving them a little more information about the quiz results, but look, they get this extra thing too. And then that makes them feel as though they're not being taken advantage of. I think the design is really important for these quizzes. You need to make it easy to use. It needs to have a clean layout. It needs to be mobile friendly, which means they can take it on their phone and they don't have to wiggle it back and forth to be able to actually read a complete line. So that's going to be important, because I would say probably at least 50% are doing those kinds of quizzes on their phone, if not more than that. Needs to be really visually appealing. Think about who your audience is in terms of the design itself. What would appeal to them? I would also have it sync to the cover of your book. Make everything look like it's one. It's just part of your book itself. So have it tied to that book's design as well. I used Journey websites, created my prayingpersonalities.com website, and actually you can have it as a page on your own website, and some do that. I was following the example of my friend Sandra Dalton Smith, whose Sacred Rest quiz was an entirely separate website. Okay, but it's still linked on mine. So yes, I have a separate domain for that, and I do have to pay for that. But with 6,000 plus people in 45 different countries around the world who have taken this quiz, to me, that's worth it. And those are only actually the people who completely clicked through and subscribed. So there are many, many more than that. I'm probably 3 times that who actually took the quiz. So there are a variety of platforms I can share with you as we're on this Design Matters concern here. that I looked up. There are lots of different quiz platforms you could check out. I can't speak for any of the validity of these. Again, I had Journey websites create mine. So one is called Interact, and this is one of the top dedicated quiz platforms. And it's built specifically for lead capture and segmentation. Another is called Outgrow, and this is designed for conversion focused quizzes and assessments. So then there's another called Score App, and it focuses on quiz funnels and again, lead generation. There's another one called Quizzer, and it's spelled QZZR, and it's built for engagement and audience segmentation. Again, there are many more of these. I just got some help online in finding these. Google Forms even has one. As I've talked with friends of mine who've created quizzes, they admit that they're the ones that the very simple ones that they have created haven't necessarily always been specifically helpful. So, from my personal perspective, and it's just my opinion, I would say have a separate website for it, have it linked to your website so they are connected in some way, and then get help with it. And for me, this was an investment. I took a big chunk of the book advance money that I got for this particular book project, and I threw it into that. And I think it has been well worth that investment over the couple years that the book has been in print. So again, think ease of use, and people have to be able to easily use it on their phone. You don't want to lose it there. The wonderful thing about this, again, as I've mentioned, is that the nice bonus that this will help build your e-list. And these people are people who are already interested in your topic. They'll get their results, the analysis of the results through the email. Each result is going to be a separately funneled email. So for each of those 4 results that you have to create the language for that particular email that's going to go out to someone with that kind of response. Again, 4 different results there. So that's something you have to think about as well. I think the results, again, it's really worth working at this really hard. It will extend your connection. It will establish that sense of your being an authority on this particular topic. People begin to trust you. They buy into the information that you're going to be sending them, at least maybe on a monthly basis with your email newsletter. I call mine a mini magazine. But it's going to, help establish that relationship with that potential reader. So encourage sharing. You can provide the option for someone to actually share the quiz with someone else. Maybe you want to have this, you want to have a link on there, share this with a friend, because as people are taking these quizzes, they're already thinking, oh, Sherry should take this, or Linda should take this as well. So provide the ability for them to kind of either share it on someone's socials or to email it to someone, the link to someone directly. That's another thing to be considered. And they can also, as they're sharing on social media, there's a little way that you can have them share it in such a way like, my praying personality is I'm a friend of God. What's your praying personality? And so again, the links establish those kinds of connections over and over again. Let's talk about some common mistakes with quizzes. Some are simply too long. Those like, where's your ideal place to live? I have fallen into some of those traps before. And they can give you like 40 different kinds of questions. I'm like, I think there's quiz fatigue that can happen with people, and because they want things more quickly. Some are more vague. The questions are more vague. The responses are more vague. There aren't clear distinctions between the opportunities and the answers. They may be too sales focused, where, I mean, like on every question, and every question should be a separate page, as you're doing your quiz, that is too sales focused, like buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. Or the design is unprofessional, or the grammatical errors there. So, once it's up, make sure that it's just pristine and that everything connects, everything works right. I have to admit, there was a bit of tension, I believe, between um, what I wanted with my quiz, what my publisher was hoping was going to happen, because we created the QR code to go in the book before the actual quiz was launched. Okay, there's a leap of faith right there, right? So all these pieces have to work together perfectly for the results to be helpful to the reader. So, make sure that everything is all wonderful. Again, kind of going back and kind of reviewing some of the high points here, to build those results first. Know what your results are, and know what the specifics, the descriptions for those particular results, what will they be based on the questions that you could ask? What are important questions to ask? And how are those results going to be different from one another? Um, Use a professional designer if this is not your skill set. Get the domain. You can post it on your website. Use a professional designer. Again, there's the name of my designer there. And Angela Driscoll does website development for Redemption Press and does a beautiful job with that. And then test it over and over again. Test it on paper. You start your quiz first. I did mine just on a yellow pad. If you know me, I use a yellow pad. And so that's where it started. And I'm like, is this going to be reliable? Is this going to work? And make sure that it's all going to bring about the best benefit to those people who are potential readers. Because if they get turned off by your quiz, they're not going to want to read your book. So you got to make sure it works. So some final thoughts. Again, your quiz may be a doorway to someone's personal transformation. Think about this. Years ago, when I took those personality kinds of quizzes, it was life-changing for me. Life-changing in terms of my understanding, my purpose, my identity, in Christ as a believing woman. So when readers feel seen, my friend, they will lean in. And so as you are offering these insights and these help for them, they learn to trust you and they want to learn more. So it's not just about selling a book, it's about helping someone take their next step with God. Here's if you're on your computer, this will take you to my Praying Personalities quiz. You might find it helpful again to take a look at it, see how it's put together, what are the various steps involved and all the pieces that you have to use to make it all work well. And I'm not trying to sell my book or whatever. I'm just saying I think it's a good example. And then, have any questions? I'm going to look in. Again, when readers feel seen, they will lean in, and that's when they'll want what you actually have written. So, looking over in the comments section here, thank you. Perfect timing for this topic. Yes, the idea is to interact, outgrow. Shelley has put some available kind of sites here for you to be able to construct a quiz on your own. So these are different platforms for quiz making: Interact, Outgrow, Score App, Quizzer, a bunch there for you. You are most welcome, Lynette. Thank you. Lots to absorb. I know it's it's the first time I've taught on this subject, and it was definitely a learning curve for me. but I think it has really lent itself to the success of the book. And hopefully it's helped people kind of abandon shame about what they feel they're not doing right in regard to prayer, but actually find their praying personality and a praying lifestyle that is helpful to them. Okay, Colleen is asking, can we have a couple quiz questions on the back cover of our book? Those could definitely be, that could be part of your hook. I say, perhaps as part of the hook of your book. I don't think you'd put the questions there themselves, but definitely some of the material from, that leads to the content of my book, you're going to find on the hook on the back cover of my book. So thank you so much. Again, we appreciate your being here. This is Writing Wise. I'm Janet McHenry for Redemption Press. Blessings.